The president has not answered.
Point of exigence.
Take your seat. There is no exigence. Take your seat.
I don't want this break. I don't want this break.
Thank you very much, Speaker.
When the time comes, people will say, we trust this one.
What a dramatic week it's been on the political front, and that's our focus for this evening through the eyes of some of those who were involved.
Sit down. I said no more points of order.
Speaker.
Take your seat.
No, it's a point of exigence.
Take your seat. There is no exigence. Take your seat. Take your seat, Tambo.
There's an
Take your seat. Take your seat. Order, Speaker. Order.
We look at how a new small party this week made its presence felt. The man behind it, ATM President Vuyo Zungula, squares up with the ANC's National Executive Committee member and party spokesperson, Bulemabe, as we revisit the issue of whether President Cyril Ramaphosa answered his pala-pala questions or not. COPE Deputy President Willem Adisha gives us an update on the shenanigans within his party and tells us whether he or Musiwa Likota is in fact in charge. The DA gets a shock of its life as its Johannesburg City Council Speaker is ousted with the help of the party's coalition partners. This hardly a week after the party's leader, John Steenhuisen, was confident their coalition partners would stand beside them.
When the time comes, people will say, we trust this one.
We also dig deep into our archives to try and make sense of comments former ANC President Thabo Mbeki made last week, but which continued to generate a lot of conversations well into this week. The Watchdog starts now. South Africans are still trying to make sense of what the following scenes from yesterday were about.
I don't want this break.
Willem Adisha is COPE's deputy president, together with his president, Musiwa Likota, whom you saw there. They are the party's only two MPs in parliament. He joins us now on the line for an update. Mr. Adisha, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Let's start with what happened there yesterday. Were you able to make sense of it?
Good evening and thank you very much. That which happened yesterday was extremely unfortunate, and it ought not to have happened really, because what we believe has got to happen in COPE, it's what appears in the values. When we formed COPE, we said that leaders in particular must be led by the constitutional values. They must be reliable, there must be accountability, they must be incorruptible. That is what we said when we formed COPE, and that is in our constitution. But then what has permeated the organization at the moment is actually a contradiction to that which we had. And that is why we have this kind of problems. And I want to say to you and to all South Africans who may be watching this, that we are going to remove all this kind of shenanigans, as you said, to make sure that the organization is there, it lives, is above all of us.
Were you able to identify the people who stormed that room? why they did it, what it was exactly that they hoped to achieve?
Well, what I have seen is that this actually was on television, it was in the news. I saw the whole action from afar. I was not at that meeting, that unconstitutional meeting, that meeting which introduced people who were so elected, we do not know from where. So I was not in that meeting. And I'm talking here about the people who, of course, some of them are not the leaders of the Congress of the People. Some of them are not even members of COPE, but then most of them are people who were elected and put into that particular leadership, as I have always said, in a rendezvous somewhere in Bloemfontein. It's extremely unfortunate. And these people shouldn't have been given a chance to take our organization to that particular level. This has got to be resolved.
Decode that for us, please, if you will, Mr. Madisha. What you're saying is Musiwa Lekota convened what you deem to be or to have been an illegal meeting with people who are, some of whom are not even part of COPE. And that's what led to what we saw yesterday. Is that what you say?
Exactly. You see, when we talk about the meetings of the Congress National Committee, which is the second highest decision-making structure of the organization, in between the Congresses, we talk about people who will be there, who were directly elected at the Congress, about 18 of them, and the provincial leaders. And what we see there are the people who came together from one province, and only two people who were elected at the National Congress, and others, just friends who came there, unfortunately with our president, to do whatever they did, something which is extremely wrong. And the meeting which was held by ourselves a few days thereafter was the meeting which was actually convened by the president of our organization. And we knew that we'd be going to that meeting to deal with very many issues of concern, to say, how do we take the organization forward? It is unfortunate that our president then called those particular people, some of them who were drunk really, and did whatever they did. Now, that does not take the organization forward, and hence I'm saying, all of us as the leaders of the organization, including our president, because he is our president, we've got to come together in the Central National Committee, sit down and come up with a proper way forward, because that is possible.
But, I mean, do you not take responsibility, I mean, for it? Because you are the ones who, said your president should not be president. You decided to tell him to go home and have some rest instead of presiding over your party. And what we saw yesterday is the outcome of that.
What we saw yesterday is actually not wholly that which you are putting before me now. We have said that the president is the president, and I want to emphasize that even now I say Mr. Lekota is the president of COPE. Yes, we have advised him. When I say we, I'm referring to a few leaders with whom he has worked for a very, very long time, to say, given the conditions, health conditions in which you are, it's best to seek and consider whether you shouldn't rest or what. And we're talking this, I'm talking about an empirical evidence here that we ourselves know. And he himself said, I am prepared to do that, and I am going to talk to my family, give me a week, and so on. Now, that is okay. Well, he decided, otherwise. But like I'm saying, on 4 occasions, that is what he told us. Because we feel pity for him. I mean, you saw, for example, yesterday, even when those punches were thrown, the poor old man could not sit straight. He was asleep. I mean, those are the kind of things which are there. And we want to save him from this kind of things. However, what the Congress National Committee said is their resolution was that let him be put aside until he shall have come to the Central Executive Committee, which is the committee that does work on a daily basis, to say, Mr. President, that which you are doing is wrong, of moving from one province to the other, forming your own structures, which are parallel to the constitutional structures. Even the people that he went there to introduce as the leaders, like I said, are not even members of the organization, or those who are not members of the organization who purport to be the leaders in one province are not even leaders anymore. But then the poor old man was, pushed around, and he arrived at that kind of a situation of establishing and introducing wrong people to the organization. Now, our members, our executive, our Central National Committee, the highest decision-making body in between the national congresses, which only come after every 5 years, they have risen and said, no, this is wrong. Something has got to be done.
Who is leading the Congress of the People as we speak? Who's the person in charge?
The president, Mr. Musiwa Teralokota, is the president. He may have been suspended, but he remains president of the organization. It is the work of the Central Executive Committee to follow the Constitution, to follow the Code of Conduct, to follow the disciplinary processes if that becomes necessary. And after they will have done that, they will collate all the information and then take it to the Congress National Committee. And the Congress National Committee shall then resolve whether he is guilty. If he is not, then he will just go on as president of the organization, of course, get respected, and a way forward shall be looked into, because after all, we're going to the National Congress next year in December on the 16th.
In the meantime, who is in charge? Because he's suspended, as you say, pending the process you just alluded to.
The Congress National Committee, of course, took a resolution that this whole thing must be hastened so that we have a resolution as a matter of urgency. Well, the Constitution really is very clear. It says that if a particular leader is not there, then the deputy to that particular leader has got to do the work. Something which has been happening for a very, very long time. It is something that is there in the Constitution. But I do not want to say that that is a resolution that was adopted at the moment. All that I'm saying is that the Constitution indicates that this deputy must do the work on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, minute by minute. That is what the Constitution says. But I cannot here rise and say to you that that is the resolution at the moment. But then the Constitution says that. But then the CNC now has not arrived at the resolution as yet to say that that must be implemented by hook or crook at the moment.
And of course, you are that deputy. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Madisha, Deputy President of the Congress of the People, on the back, of course, of that video that has been trending over the past more than 24 hours, for more than 24 hours now. Well, he says in the absence of a president, or when the president cannot function, the deputy, according to their constitution, is the person in charge. Well, of course, for a good couple of days, even before the incident we've just referred to, we've been asking co-president Mosiuoa to come on the program. Despite promises, we've been given a runaround as late as this afternoon. Of course, South Africans, haven't. South Africans being South Africans, maybe is what I should say. They have been poking fun, making fun of this particular incident. Of course, going back to some of the videos, from the past that the two gentlemen, COPE's president and deputy president, were featured in. Take a look at what South Africans have been playing, replaying, putting on their Facebook, Twitter, and what have you statuses.
Yes. Hong, hong, hong.
Honorable Matisha.
Hong, hong.
Honorable Matisha.
That's the only thing that she knows.
Honorable.
Never a dull moment in this country, even when things are as serious as what happened in that video are. But COPE, of course, is not the only party licking its wounds today. The official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, got a surprise wake-up call this morning, almost literally. In a late-night move orchestrated by the ANC, Speaker and DA Councillor Vasco da Gama was ousted with the help of the DA's coalition partners. For votes of 5 councillors from the ACDP, the IFP and COPE were crucial in making the coup a success. Silas Brink is the DA's national spokesperson and joins us on the line. Good evening, Silas. Thanks very much for your time. Were you surprised at what happened?
Certainly. There was a coalition agreement in place in Johannesburg. The motion of no confidence in the Speaker was expected, and the coalition position was that all of the parties that form part of that coalition, including COPE, the ACDP, and the IFP, would vote against the ANC-EFF motion to remove the Speaker. And what happened was that it seems 2 ACDP councillors, 1 IFP councillor, and a COPE councillor, in fact, supported the motion of no confidence. So that's a breach of the coalition agreement. The coalition had an emergency meeting this morning, and all of the parties committed to correct the conduct of those councillors. And of course, the ACDP in particular in Gauteng issued a statement in which it said that that is not the party's position. So very unfortunate. I think it goes to show the risks of coalitions. We mustn't romanticize coalitions. Coalitions are a means to an end, but certainly no ideal situation where you've got so many parties and a fragmented non-ANC vote. But we're certainly committed to going back to that Joburg Council and reinstating the mayor of the coalition.
Well, you talk about risks of coalitions, but someone else may say you should have expected this because the way you've handled these coalitions has led to a lot of disgruntled people among your coalition partners, including the people that could potentially, give you some of the things that you need. And the case of Nelson Mandela Bay, for example, comes into mind, where you, for the longest time, you had the EFF, for example, saying, we keen to, give you or help you get what you want, but you're not talking to us.
Well, the EFF is unreliable, and as the DA has said at the outset, we are not going to negotiate with the EFF. We're not going to let the EFF form part of our coalitions. It's not just a matter of a complete irreconcilable difference in worldview and values and ideology. It's also that we know the track record of the EFF. We saw what it did in Tshwane, in Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela Bay. And so when they say, come with us, we'll help you, we simply don't believe them. So the EFF has never been part of the formal coalition agreement that was signed after 2021. They supported DA mayoral candidates, despite the DA basically telling them to get lost. It wasn't the EFF's conduct that was a surprise. It was the conduct of councillors of parties who are represented in the coalition agreement and who had agreed prior to that council meeting to not support the motion of no confidence. So of course you have differences within coalitions. Of course you've got to accommodate different views. There has to be debate. And that's exactly why we have very detailed and sophisticated agreements and deadlock resolution mechanisms, but none of those were followed. And Vuyo, I think if you look at what the party leaders of those councillors have said, I think it's clear that they went rogue. And this is not an example of a fractured relationship. It's an example of people simply going rogue and betraying their own coalition.
Rogue, perhaps, as far as you are concerned, but what if I say to you, it's a sign that the people who are actually involved, the people who have to deal with some of your leaders on a regular basis, are actually so fed up with what they have to put up with that they are prepared to take the kind of risk that these five councillors in particular took, whatever the consequences may be for them?
Well, then they should have declared a dispute. They should have resolved their issues within their own parties. It doesn't help if the party and the party leader says to you, we'll go along with the coalition, we'll support the coalition, but then the representatives of those parties, meant to be bound by the party discipline, do something else. There are ways that you can record disagreement. In this case, it simply did not happen. Those folks completely acted contrary to the commitment they had made prior to that. So listen, you can give me examples of where there has been serious disagreements and where those should have been resolved better, but this is not one of them.
I want us to take a listen to what your leader had to say last week when he called a briefing to specifically address the matter of coalitions and how the Democratic Alliance plans to handle this on the back, of course, of a position by the ANC that it wants to take back the three metros in Gauteng.
These coordinated attacks on our mayors and also our speakers are nothing short of a coup attempt by the corrupt. But this goes beyond our mayors, our speakers, and these individual multi-party metro coalitions. Because what the ANC is attacking is the very idea of a coalition alternative in South Africa. By trying to scupper these metro coalition governments, they're effectively attacking our country's last chance to move on beyond ANC dominance. They're attacking Project South Africa, and they're threatening to drag us back to a place we should never, ever return to. But I want to tell you today that this project will not fail. It's too important to fail. We will not allow the ANC and its proxy parties to sabotage the future of our country. We've come too far already, and there's just too much at stake to let them back in now. I can assure you that the party I lead has the stomach for this fight.
Well, it would seem the ANC too has a stomach for this fight.
They certainly do, and I think it's significant what John mentioned there. If you have any doubt that the ANC is determined to escape the outcome of the last election, you can only look at what they did in the city of Tshwane a mere 2 years ago, when that city, where the ANC was comprehensively defeated, but not enough for a clear majority, the ANC Gauteng provincial government placed Tshwane under unlawful administration for a ruinous period of 8 months, and the consequences of which that city is still trying to live with. You can clearly see it on the cash flow statements. The income wasn't collected, clearance certificates not issued, building plans not approved. And so we know that the ANC is willing to do anything, not necessarily even to gain control, but to make sure that anything else fails. The subtext is, if we can't govern your city, nobody can. So they are determined, but we see the motion of no confidence in the Speaker of Johannesburg as a temporary setback. We will recover. The coalition will strengthen. If members of the coalition who have acted dishonestly, and there's certainly rumors of that, are found to have done so, they must be removed. We now have written coalition agreements with sophisticated mechanisms, as I mentioned, that didn't exist between 2016 and 2021. And the DA is committed to using those coalition mechanisms to make government as stable and reliable as possible. But I assure you, we do have the stomach for the fight.
And you don't think that perhaps you need to relook the way you are managing these coalitions and the messages, subtle or not, that you are passing, on to your coalition partners, or at least individual members of the parties that you are in coalitions with?
Listen, Vuyo, the DA is not perfect. We've never claimed to be perfect. We're a learning organization. We do make mistakes. These coalitions are the first tests of a new model of how Gauteng and South Africa could be governed. We certainly make mistakes. We certainly have missteps, and we are willing to reflect on that. But there are instances where, if the coalition agreement is breached, if parties to the coalition say one thing and then do something else, there has to be consequences. And if you don't insist on those consequences, that does not make you arrogant, that does not make you conceited. It is crucial that there be consequences for that conduct. Otherwise, these coalitions are not going to work.
Silas Brink, thanks very much for your time this evening. He's the DA's national spokesperson on the back, of course, of that shocker, the late-night move orchestrated by the ANC, where Speaker and DA Councillor Vasco da Gama was ousted with the help, of course, of councillors from the ACDP, the IFP, and the COPE. We'll see how this one pans out. We're looking at the drama that unfolded this week, affecting quite a number of political parties. Earlier, I was speaking to COPE's deputy president on the back of those visuals we've been talking about over the past 24 hours or so, where people stormed a room and attacked other COPE members. Up next, ATM President Vuyo Zungula squares up with ANC National Executive Committee member and national spokesperson Bule Mabe on the back of what we saw in Parliament this week. Welcome back. We'll continue to look at some of the dramatic events we saw on the political front this week. Right now, we're going to look at how a new small party made its presence felt in Parliament. The man behind it, ATM President Vuyo Zungula, is here in the studio, and with him is the ANC's National Executive Committee member, also party spokesperson, and that's Bule Mabe. We revisit the issue of whether President Cyril Ramaphosa answered his pala questions in Parliament the other day. Gentlemen, good evening. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Vuyo, and greetings to my colleague Ubule.
No. Welcome to you too.
Thank you for inviting us, and greetings to the president of ATM.
I mean, this whole thing has gotten South Africans talking. Everyone has a view on it, and you do have a view. But before we talk about your view, I just want us to listen to what the president said after your written question as a departure point.
The opposition and the governing party differ on when the president must answer the outstanding questions. The opposition insists that there must be a separate session before his next appearance.
Let us schedule the question session to be as urgent as possible, and the still remaining proposal is that it must be next week.
Next week, at the earliest convenience, in an oral session, the questions, the two remaining questions, get to be answered orally.
My plea to the meeting is that we agree that we will go back, not through a motion to the House to bring the matter, we will go back to where the incorrect, in our view, the incorrect ruling was made, to start from there, to then allow the president to finish answering his questions.
The ANC has a different view.
Our take is that, Honorable Speaker, through a motion in the House to authorize that the supplementary question be brought back to the to the agenda of the House of the National Assembly, the program of the National Assembly, then this supplementary questions must be brought back and be dealt with in the next question session, which is the 29th of September.
The Speaker has expressed disappointment at the failure of different parties to reach a consensus. She mapped out a way forward.
I am going to write a letter to the President to request a date so that we can complete this business. Honorable members are also aware that I cannot make a determination on availability of the President. I am not the one who runs this diary. So I will just write to the President, and I would expect that the President will then respond and advise us on a date of his availability.
She is expected to meet the ANC Chief Whip and the Deputy President, who is the leader of government business, in Parliament this week to thrash out the issue. Lula Mamakya, SABC News, Parliament.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, that, of course, is where things are from the conversations that took place among yourselves as MPs, including, of course, the Speaker of Parliament, as to how you're going to proceed from this point. But I thought earlier we were going to play that clip. But you are convinced that he didn't answer the questions the other day.
Portfolio, if you were to ask me if I'm married, and my answer is that, you know, this thing of me being married, it is something of national importance, there's interest, but I've been advised not to answer. I've responded to the question, but I've not answered. So our view is that the president must answer questions, not just merely say something, but not answer the questions. Oversight and the parliamentary accountability model works if the president is called to Parliament to answer questions. So if you were to listen to that answer of the so-called answer of the president, he speaks a lot about the national interest, how he's been advised, and how other parties are using this for mileage, and then he says he's going to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies. But if you read the question is asking, will he come to Parliament and allow himself to be engaged by the elected representatives of the people on this issue? The second part is, would he have done something different in terms of how he's handled Parliament? In his entire statement, he does not touch those two elements or those two parts of the question. That is why I stood up that day and said he's not answered, he's merely responded. And there's a sentence he puts there where he says he's been advised not to answer. So I don't get how people are now saying he's answered, whereas in his own admission, he says he's been advised not to answer.
You're convinced he did?
Well, of course, good evening to your viewers. I think the fact that the President of the African National Congress, in his capacity as the President of the Republic, has allowed himself to be scrutinized by members of Parliament, that is the first sign of accountability. Of course, some of the issues associated with this matter are sub judice. It's matters that are being handled by law enforcement agencies. You would know that when cases are before the courts, you do not want to
But this one isn't.
Well, not the courts. I'm saying bear with me on that one, and thanks for the correction. But it is a matter that the police, law enforcement agencies are looking into. So there is an ongoing investigation. We were made aware.
But then that doesn't make it sub judice.
Well, the fact that the answers that you are giving out in an open platform called Parliament could be the very ones that you might also want to come and share with the police or those conducting investigation at the time that they engage with you. The president said that he was advised not to deal with the substantive issues because those are being addressed with the relevant institutions, these being law enforcement agencies. That does not take away the rights of parties in Parliament to call the president to account. The ANC is on record as saying the issue of Phala Phala has actually had an effect on its own standing as a brand and how it is perceived by the public. The president going out there to begin addressing some of the issues is part of making sure that we do not allow this issue to drown the brand of the African National Congress. And we can only do so when the president is seen to be accounting, is seen to be taking responsibility and taking the nation along with him. It's very important.
So just to go back to the quick yes or no. So do you agree that he didn't answer, but there was a reason for him to not do that? Or do you feel, as the presidency insisted as late as yesterday, that he answered the question?
Well, to a large extent, he did answer, did not deal with those issues that might be having some inference towards a case that is now being dealt with by law enforcement agencies. Of course, we will not take away the right of parties in Parliament if they want to introduce a debate of this nature again. We are confident that when issues like this are raised, our president will always make himself available to deal with this. In the same way that he did. He made himself available to the Integrity Commission of the African National Congress to be able to go and ventilate on these issues. The ANC is on record as saying that. We did not say, no, we are not going to talk about this issue. We spoke about it. Members of the National Working Committee had made attempt to try and raise a debate on this, and they were advised that the best time to discuss these issues would be when matters have been cleared or clarified with the Integrity Commission. Then we are then furnished with a report. When we engage, we are able to engage from an informed view, because like any other member of the African National Congress, the rights of the president as a member of the ANC have got to be respected in the same way that all other members of the party who appear before integrity commissions are given that kind of protection by the party, especially where they are ventilating matters before the Integrity Commission.
Why, for you, was it important for the president to answer the question there in Parliament during that sitting and not, for example, at some other forum or when answering questions asked by a state law enforcement agency or the Integrity Committee of the ANC?
The ANC Integrity Committee, it is a commission or an entity of the ANC. Us as members of Parliament, we're dealing with the state president. Now, this state president cannot conflate issues between his own party, the mechanisms that his own party uses to hold him accountable, and us as elected representatives of the people. The second issue is that we're dealing with the head of state that is in a position or is given power to appoint people like your national commissioners, your judges, etc. So it is our view that he must have, we must have confidence in him that he's not, engulfed in criminal activities. Now, you'll recall that this scandal broke out in June this year. From June this year up until now, he spoke in the ANC conference in Polokwane. He spoke about it, meaning he respected those people there, but he does not respect the people of South Africa. And I also want to touch on the fact that there is nothing, with the president coming to parliament to account, it's not him doing us a favor. So he can't be saying now the president came because for whatever reason. It's a must, whether he likes it or not, he accounts to parliament. And the process that is followed in parliament, we write to the questions table in parliament to say, with the question and answer session of the president, this is our question. That department or table comes back to us and say, correct this, correct that. Now there is a question that will be approved by parliament. It gets to be sent to the president at least 2 weeks before the session, meaning by the time that the president was supposed to answer on Tuesday, he had more than 2 weeks to have an answer. But because he does not respect the people of South Africa, he goes there and he disrespects his oath of office, because his oath of office states that he needs to abide by the Constitution. The Constitution states that the president must account to parliament. Now, he did not account when he does not answer, meaning he's also violated his oath of office by not answering to a question of parliament. Now, the other entities, there's nothing stopping him from, complying with any questions from the public protector, from the Reserve Bank, from SARS, any of those institutions. Here we're dealing with Parliament, which is an institution that represents the people. And as you know, this issue has been topical. It has had interest in the eyes of the people of our country. That is why we felt it is important it be ventilated in Parliament, so that the people have got confidence that we as opposition parties are doing what we are supposed to do. We'll recall that even in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, Parliament gets to be lambasted every time that it failed to hold the executive accountable. So we're doing what we are elected to do, what we've been lambasted and that we are not doing. So for us to make the president account, we don't hate him. We just want the president to account. If he did not commit any crime, it's all well and good. And lastly, him saying that this is before law enforcement agencies, in accordance to the rules of parliament, there's nothing that is legally prohibiting him from answering. There's no rule. Rule 89 speaks about something that is sub judice, meaning it is before the court. This matter is not before the court. With Minister of Finance, when he was accused of that sexual misconduct, he spoke out and said he did not do this. He even confirmed what his wife was doing, etc. Why can't the president do the same thing, but in parliament, and be engaged by members of parliament?
Constitutional obligations.
Well, Budvuyo, like I said earlier on, that just him making himself, the president could have said, I'm not going to parliament at all, even if he's to speak in broad terms and address the issues that are there, because this matter is now before the police. But what did he do? Understanding the very oath that he took, the responsibility that he carries as the president of the republic, he went to parliament to really deal with his own understanding of the issue, where the issue is at, and what is it that he is able to ventilate out to the public. The presidency, which he leads as the president of the republic, has issued numerous statements on this very matter. Actually, when the case was first opened at the Rosebank police station, which was actually also a wrong police station, because if you allege that a crime has happened, you have got to open it at the place where it took place. But this one was opened here in Rosebank. On the very same day, the presidency issued a statement. I happened to be with the president in Limpopo at the provincial conference of the ANC that the president of ATM is referring to. In there, as he was delivering his own address to conference, he spoke about the parliament and did not evade talking to the media. When we left plenary, as we were leaving, we did what they ordinarily refer to as a doorstop. He spoke to journalists again, still dealing with this, because it was, that was the weekend. It was quite topical at that time. Everyone was really asking this. So, but I think the fairness, out of the fairness of all of this would be to allow processes to unfold, so that when you ultimately hold the president to account, you are also acting with full appreciation of facts arising out of investigations that have been done. This we've been told that there is an investigation that is ongoing. The president has already said that he will cooperate with this investigation. If questions are put forward to him by the police or any other organ of state, whether it's SARS, it's the NPA, or it's the public protector, he will be able to give answers that they may need.
I don't know what the marching orders, your party's marching orders were to your MPs, how they were going to handle this thing. That there were some worrisome statements. And that's partly why I thought we should have this conversation this evening. I don't know if we have a clip from the minister in the presidency, Mondli Gungubele, who said something that I think didn't sit well with a lot of people because of, well, primarily because of the era we just came from, where ANC MPs would rally behind the president at whatever cost, even trampling, basically throwing away, the constitutional obligations, of MPs or of the legislature in its as a whole. I'm hoping we can play this clip, and I want both of you. I want us to talk about it. Because it was just one of those moments, that made a lot of people say, "Is that actually what is supposed to happen?" Because logic and common sense doesn't explain, that, because it then raises other questions. I'm sure we can play it now.
Sitting here, the president has adequately answered the question. And he has even referred to him being accountable. And so this is why you are saying you will not be able to prescribe. But I really think that the president has adequately answered the question. I will appreciate the speaker to invoke Rule 92 and also Rule 142, such that if the member is aggrieved, they knows what to do so that the matter can go to in committees.
When questions are raised to the executive, what you are minimally entitled to is the response. 2, we don't have a memorandum here, like at school, where when we ask you a question and there's a prescribed way how to answer it.
What you are minimally entitled to is a response.
Look, it shows how much the president and the minister and the presidents, and to a certain extent, the ANC executive undermines the people of South Africa. You can't say what we're entitled to minimally is just a response, because when you ask a question, you deserve an answer, not a response per se. I can't ask you whether are you married or not, and you don't give, and that question requires a yes or no answer. You say anything and everything, but that is not related to the question that is asked. That is why even that day, the president said a lot of nothing, but he did not answer the question that was asked. So that is why for us, we believe that if he spoke in Polokwane, he also spoke to the media. Why can't he account? And if he's going to say he will cooperate, also Parliament is an institution he should cooperate with. And the Parliament as an institution has got also its own rules and directives as to how he should cooperate with that particular institution. So for us, we also believe, remember, he requested an extension with the public protector. He only answered when he was threatened with a subpoena. We also learned this week that even with the Reserve Bank, he did not answer. He's been given an extension up until the 8th. Therefore, you're dealing with someone who's not basically cooperative, even though in the public domain, he's saying he's cooperative.
So you obviously don't agree with the sentiments of some in the opposition who say increasingly the president is becoming rogue.
Well,
not answering, not meeting deadlines, that kind of thing.
Well, but I don't think that we should really make it a practice to just disagree for the sake of it. We have to understand the issues that are being raised and where we have got clarity, be able to clarify those. You have got members of parliament that are calling for greater accountability. So, for instance, the answers that the president gave in Limpopo during his address to that conference are the very same ones that he gave to the National Assembly. So we are not different there. To the extent that there is an investigation that is ongoing, there is a case that has been reported, I will cooperate with all of those processes. I will be able to table whatever evidence that I've got at my disposal to empower those that are doing this work.
Okay, let's take a couple of tweets in the little time that we have left. Ramaphosa didn't want to answer about audio of SSA money used for politics. Instead, Derek Mervyn was suspended. He fails to answer the SARB, Public Protector, and Parliament on Pala Pala Farm. Where does Cyril account ANC is protecting him? Let's see if we can take another one. The president must take responsibility and must answer the questions instead of making lame statements. There's a difference between an answer and a statement. Let's take one more just for Ramaphosa did not steal our money. We don't care what happened at Pala Pala. We'll hold him accountable for government issues, not private and personal matters, which doesn't hurt the country. We want the Gupta family to be repatriated and nothing else. Maybe you want to take that last one.
Everyone but Vuyo's committed a crime in South Africa, be it the Guptas, be it Molefe, be it Arnold Singh. All of them must account. They must be subjected to law enforcement agencies, and the law must take its course. The issue that this guy is raising, that it is something that happened he did not steal public money. To have a president that is accused of money laundering and the subsequent crimes of kidnapping, torturing, tax evasion, for any citizen, that must worry you if you've got someone in the number one citizen of our country being accused of such crimes. So up until the president has been cleared, then we can believe that the president indeed is beyond reproach and he could have confidence when it comes to appointing of people in institutions. But up until now, we'll always suspect that whatever that he does, he's trying to protect himself from accountability.
He must account, period.
Well, the president of the ANC has never come out to say that he will not be able to account when called to do so. For the fact that he has made himself available to Parliament, he might not have given answers that satisfied members of Parliament. But just that one principle, making yourself available, even in the midst of issues that are being discussed about yourself out in the public, shows that you've got nothing to hide. He has made himself available. So basically that should be the minimum threshold. If members of Parliament so feel that the answers given are not sufficient, they are welcome to use the rule of the rules of Parliament to reintroduce those kind of debates. What we can assure them is that the cadres of the African National Congress deployed in Parliament in whatever capacity, when so called to account, we've always said that they must go to account. You have said, what are the marching orders? The expectation is always that when caucus of the African National Congress sit, it always drives one consistent message that public representatives of the ANC must remember that when they sit in the gallery, in the National Assembly, they've got to carry the interest of the people of South Africa first. That the president of the country has gone there, called by parties to come and account, is the first sign of demonstrating and displaying that we take the people of this country serious. Might have not have been sufficient. If members of Parliament so feel, they are welcome to invoke rules of Parliament to be able to call anyone amongst those that we have deployed in Parliament to come and account. And we are confident that when so-called cadres will make themselves available.
Gentlemen, let me thank you very much for your time. But before you go, let's get to this. Ndiketeni, that's a term made popular by former ANC President Thabo Mbeki this past week. The tendency among ANC members to say, I'm available, please elect me. which, of course, from the conversation, well, from the speech he was giving at that memorial service, was something unheard of in the ANC and not a quite the desirable behavior, the kind of behavior that the ANC should frown upon. It then took me back to an interview we did back in 2005, I think it was, at the University of Pretoria, where in the run-up to Polokwane, I asked him, well, for the first time, he was being asked for the first time, whether he would indeed make himself available to contest the position of president of the African National Congress. We leave you with a bite or two from that interview. Have a good night.
There was nobody who said, I want to be a president. No, none. No, nobody who said, indicate any. But today, baninzi ondiketheni.
The issue of succession. Everyone has been talking about it. Do you have a view as to whether the ANC should deal with the issue right now ahead of 2007?
I do. I do have a very firm view.
You have to step down as the country's president.
When the time comes, people will say, we trust this one.
Would you accept nomination for president of the ANC?
The ANC doesn't have such a limitation. If they said so,